16. La Cucaracha. The Ritters are thrown into a small, windowless cell. The only light comes from a bare light bulb dangling from the center of the ceiling. It's this light bulb that wakes Errol up. His head throbs, radiating sour needles of pain down his spine with every merciless heartbeat. He musters enough courage to peel open his eyelids, only to slam them back shut as soon as the light stabs into his retinas. He wasn't able to catch much from the brief snapshot, but he thinks he saw a sack of potatoes lying in the opposite corner of the room. He slowly starts to open his eye again, just one, so the direct light is blocked by the bulge of his nose. The sack of potatoes wrinkles rhythmically. Whatever it is, it's breathing. He assumes it's his sister, but he can barely grab hold of what color it is through the dense fog that permeates his mind. He stares at the sack for maybe a second and a half before his eye gives in to the power of the light. From the stone ceiling above, the electric whine of cheap wiring is screaming at him. Or maybe it's laughing. Either way, it's not much better than the light itself, which you can still see through his closed eyelids. Some kind of rough cloth is wrapped around his body. He finds one corner of it and wraps it around his hand and pulls it tight over his eyes, pressing one ear into his bicep with the other one jammed up into his shoulder. The electric whine goes away, but the pain continues to pulse through his body. He decides to lay there and take it. It can't be much worse than he deserves after being such an idiot. He thinks about what Zebulon said about how he should have been killed at birth. Thinking about all the stupid, tail-chasing bullshit that led him up to this moment, he wonders whether that wouldn't have been better. Sure, Pat had a point when she said that the guy was an asshole, but maybe that's what it takes to become an interstellar species. He lets out a shuddering breath, raking his body with more acidic waves of pain. He must have become entranced by the misery and fallen asleep at some point, because he wakes up sometime later to a thunderous clang at the far end of the room. He peeks out from under the cloth to see a metal door, in front of which 2 plates of food have appeared. His stomach begs for him to crawl across the grimy floor and scoop some of the gruel into his mouth, but he resists temptation. It's not until he hears Pat munching on a stale biscuit that he emerges from the cocoon to join her. The pain isn't quite so unbearable anymore, but it isn't great. She doesn't look at him as he settles down beside her. She just continues to graze like a zombified cow. She notices him after a few slobbery bites, and her eyes turn to him. One of the lenses of her thick glasses is shattered, making her look like she has one massive insectoid eye. She keeps chewing the bread while they engage in a brain-dead staring contest. He's not sure if she's fully awake yet. He's not really sure if he is either. After a few sludge-thick seconds, she sneezes, and a shower of crumbs rains down over her plate. She doesn't seem all that fazed, but she puts the bread down.
"This is my fault," she says.
The shock of that statement is enough to slap Errol into a temporary lucidity, but he doesn't respond. She glowers at him.
"You're supposed to say, 'Nuh-uh, Pat.'"
"What's your fault?"
"That we're gonna die in here."
"Nobody's going to die." Internally, Errol makes an addendum to that statement. "Nobody here is going to be killed for treason. Can't speak for what the warmongers are going to do with the bomb we just delivered them." She stares at him some more, then jibes.
"No one's gonna die? But my head is killing me."
Errol lets himself laugh in spite of the pain. To spite the pain, actually. It's a stupid fucking joke, and everything the pain represents is even stupider. "Maybe I do have powers after all," he tries. "And I melted part of each of our brains."
"You're an idiot."
She's not smiling. "And that's something they can never take away." Her eyes get wide, and she nods as if this is some profound statement, then takes another bite of her not-quite-food and curls up in front of the tray and stares at it as if it were a TV. He lies down opposite, and they both stare in silence. After a while, a cockroach skitters under the door and begins plundering the spoils the giants have left for him. It's riveting stuff, and they watch the critter, transfixed, until it gets its fill and starts wandering around the room. Seeing as how they're basically under a rock, Errol imagines the insect enviously admiring their mansion as he slips off into sleep again. He dreams, but there is no Zebulon this time. He's back at the cabin with Pat and Eliza. They're all playing competitive, team-based checkers with a group of 4 identical Hyperboreans. The Hyperboreans are winning, and then Eliza makes a superior, math-based move against them. It's not enough to win the game, but it's impressive, and everyone cheers. The Hyperboreans take her queen as the game transforms into chess, then instead of going on to put them all in check, the aliens flip over the board and start parading around the room as if to really drive home the fact that these human games mean nothing to them. They all ascend into the sky, and this time Errol is the one to go with them. They fly around through a cozy, cartoon cosmos, where each of the tiny planets is a hop, skip, and a jump away from the next. They meet wacky species from all sorts of worlds, and it's actually pretty great until he wakes up again. Two men stand in the doorway. A couple of nondescript white guys cast from identical molds at a factory that mass produces muscly men. One of them blows on a whistle, startling the hungover prisoners awake. Pat is so startled she swings a fist through the air, striking the man on the boot. He ignores the assault and waits stoically for the Ritters to drag themselves to their feet. Errol is hoping to catch some glimpse of whatever facility they're in, a shuttered window through which he can gauge the time of day at the very least, but there is no such luck. They're ushered out of the room and down a series of equally windowless hallways. The old brick walls are caked with layers of lime and hardy dry lichen that are impossibly thick, yet are hewn from sophisticated masonry underneath in a style of a World War I era bunker. It's subtly anachronistic in a way that Errol would probably not have noticed had he not spent the majority of his life absorbing secondhand archaeology facts via his research. He sizes up the dudes marching robotically in front of and behind them, weighing the pros and cons of probing for information about this place. The men probably aren't allowed to talk, but might very well be allowed to use force if necessary, so he keeps his lips sealed. Eventually, they make it to another wrought iron door. It's set into the stone in such a way as to suggest that they were both constructed together before being buried under deep cycles of erosion and sediment, but the door is almost futuristic in its mechanisms and is hardly oxidized at all. One of the men bangs on it, and a dull hydraulic sound precedes the door swinging smoothly open to reveal a room the same size and shape as their cell, but with a wooden table and two chairs in the center. Errol starts to step over the threshold, but one of the men stiff-arms him while the other guides Patricia inside. "What's going on?" Errol protests. "Is this some kind of interrogation? Listen, this is very important. The world is under threat from—" "Shut up," says the man, removing his massive palm from Errol's chest. "But—" The man grabs Errol by the wrist and drags him further down the hall, shoving him unceremoniously into a second interrogation room and slamming the door behind him. Errol bangs on the door from the inside, shouting for them to come back, mostly just as an excuse to tantrum. He knows full well that it's no use. His fists tire after a few good slugs against the hard metal, and he resigns himself to exploring the new space. 2 chairs, a table, 4 walls, 1 door. Not even a cockroach otherwise. He sits down on the chair and stares at the table in front of him. It's wooden and completely unscuffed. The walls are unscuffed too, like someone has been coming in here over the centuries to scrape away the layers of mineral deposits for fear the room might eventually shrink too small to be of any use to them. Something tells him that's noteworthy. Some kind of clue to their predicament. Maybe something Eliza would be able to glean were she here, but he can't guess what it could be. An ancient order tasked with overseeing civilization, building facilities like this all over the planet using alien technology? Yeah, maybe. Probably even, but that doesn't really matter, does it? The fact that his captors are part of some secret society has exactly 0 effect on the status of him being held captive. If anything, it makes it worse. Chances are these guys know how to get rid of a dead body, and based on the profound layers of proverbial shit that he's stepped in, chances are he's about to become one. He waits for a long time. Feels like an hour, but it's probably more like 20 minutes. He wonders how deep underground he is. He assumes he's underground, but that's just because of the windowless stone. He could just as easily be in some unassuming building on Main Street in a busy city, or even in a cloaked aircraft high up in the sky. He closes his eyes and tries to tune into the environment, seeing if he can sense any subtle vibrations coming from the outside world, but aside from the whining light bulb up above, there's only silence. He opens his eyes and looks around the room again. The walls are impossibly smooth. He wanders over to them to see if there are any tool marks, tiny scratches or long periodic grooves that might provide some canniness to the situation. There's nothing. He puts his hand against the wall, again trying to sense the vibration coming through the stone, and closes his eyes. A second later, he's jolted from his reverie by the iron door swinging open. He swivels around to see a man step into the chamber as the guard slams the door shut behind him. It's the white-haired agent who captured them. He introduces himself as Euler, and the name fits. He looks greasy in a sinisterly refined way, like the glossy top layer of congealed bacon fat that almost looks medicinal in its creaminess. He takes a seat at one end of the table and extends a hand toward the opposite chair, indicating that Errol is perfectly welcome to join him. Not really feeling like he has many options in this situation, he sits down. Euler smiles at him. The wrinkles in his baby plump face are delicate, as if he's been touched up by having his skin replaced by some kind of super thin plastic. The teeth have an unnatural ivory sheen as well. Whatever action figure factory turned out the guards outside, this Euler was clearly manufactured in an adjacent wing. The agent sits there for a while in silence, thoroughly establishing just how comfortable he is, and while on some level implying that Errol too has no real reason to feel uncomfortable, making it very clear that there is a top and a bottom in this situation. Errol tries his best to keep up with the staring contest, but his eyes quickly drop, becoming very engrossed in the particular shapes of his own fingers. Euler takes this as the signal to begin. "So, Errol Ritter," he says, "how are you feeling?" Errol meets his eyes and swallows. Euler waits politely for some kind of response, but when none comes, he nods. "Not too hot, I imagine. Those trains can be a doozy. Normally, the recommended dose for a human being is about half what you received, but..." He leans in closely in an obvious attempt to appear dramatic. "You aren't exactly human, are you, Mr. Ritter?" Errol stares at him for a few seconds too long, admittedly trying to come up with an equally dramatic response to this bombshell. Euler seems to take this as a tactical move. He nods again as if Errol's just made a decent chess opener. "Unless I'm mistaken," he says casually. They both sit there playing verbal chicken for a few seconds before Errol finally decides that this is a stupid game and there's more at stake. "I'm not your enemy," he says, praying that in some way this man isn't his either. Euler waits. "This world's about to be invaded by Hyperboreans." "Hyperboreans?" It's hard to tell whether or not the man is being coy. "I'm assuming you know more than the average government employee," Errol wagers. "That's a fair assumption." "So you know about the Hyperboreans?" "I'll be asking the questions. It's kind of important context." "Feel free to enlighten me." Errol hesitates, wondering what the cards he's holding are actually worth, and in what play. He wishes he spent more time playing poker and less looking out at the stars. If someone like Dr. Lumen were in his position, she'd have this guy eating out of her hand. If Errol's good at anything, though, it's exposition. He's done the spiel so many times at this point, he could probably go on the road with it. So that's what he does, and he does it just as fluidly as if he'd been annoying one of Pat's friends while on a manic episode. Then again, maybe the suits just dosed him with phenobarbital while he was asleep. Euler listens patiently and stoically through it all. How there's a spacecraft hiding behind the moon, how the denizens of that craft are supposedly here to help guide humanity to a brighter future, and how they deceived him to reach that end. Whether there was some better, more tactical way of putting it, he fully does not allow himself to care. At the end, the agent sits back in his chair and says, "So you have no real abilities of your own?" Errol cringes but nods. "And these Hyperboreans, you don't think they have our best interests at heart, despite what they say?" "Does it matter?" "Seems relevant." "Farmers make it their best interest to ensure the welfare of their cattle." "And we're the cattle in this situation." Euler chortles. "You don't suppose they want to eat us, do you?" "I think it could be much worse than that." "Slavery?" "Subtler." Errol is forming the thought as he says it out loud. "If they're able to access and manipulate our minds remotely, our entire essence of being becomes a playground. They can move through the space of thought as easily as birds move through air. Even without their technology, we wouldn't stand a chance." Euler squints at him, just breathing. "Interesting," he says finally. "So you see how we have to work together to stop them." Euler smiles and readjusts himself. "What I see, Mr. Ritter," he says, "is someone in my custody who has admitted to killing 3 of my people. Carson had just gotten back from parental leave when he met you at that window. You really think it matters that the gun was on loan from some alien dictator when you fired it? This is so much bigger than any of us." Euler barks. "Please, Mr. Ritter, I'm not finished." You stole something of such immense value that your case, should it go to trial, will be given an entire chapter of its own in the law books for longer than our own country will even exist. So, on top of murder, and it is murder, let me remind you that a uniform does not remove a person's humanity as much as popular opinion might lead you to believe, we've got you on treason. And that's all if you're lucky. He chuckles to himself. If you're not so lucky, the law won't have anything to do with it. You'll have died tragically while we were trying to apprehend you. Worst comes to worst, you make it past me with a beating heart. But folks will be able to visit a cheap gravestone with your name on it. Assuming you have anyone who would want to. God willing, your sister might be able to get away with witness protection, considering she and Dr. Lumen were likely victims of kidnapping. He snaps his finger in realization. And there we have a third charge. Fifth and sixth, actually. That's minimum. Prosecutors will be clamoring to sink their teeth into your sorry ass. Outwardly, Errol feels like he's about to cry. But something off in the space of his subconscious informs him that Euler was planning to play this much closer to his chest before Errol let his guard down. They were both being real with each other just now. He says nothing for a few seconds, then swallows hard as he tries his best to pull himself back together. The old-fashioned way this time. I guess it's only right, he says. He forces himself to embrace the idea that the others won't be going down with him. Like I said, this is all so much bigger than any of us. Euler remains stoic, but he seems miffed. Probably he's never dealt with someone who feels they have nothing to lose other than the entire planet. He cocks his head. You're just gonna roll over then? Fuck no! Errol surprises himself. I'm standing my ground, you dumb jock. If they want to take this planet, they can pry it from my cold, dead hands. Euler's eyes narrow, the hint of some unidentifiable emotion playing on the corner of his lips. Finally, he seems to relax, as if he's just gotten out of the ring after pummeling someone well under his weight class. It's a weird notion, like all this was him humoring Errol rather than truly bringing the hammer down on him. He scoots back from the table, scraping the chair loudly against the floor. Well then, Mr. Ritter, he says, standing. I suppose we're done here. Wait! Euler stops and stares, waiting. What are we going to do about them? This isn't the movies, kid. You and I are not collaborators. You are a fugitive, and I am in complete and total control of your very essence of being for the foreseeable future. If the big heads ever wanted to take us over, you can bet your life they'd get it done long before coming in contact with someone like you. But I am a hybrid, Errol vomits. I'm descended from Syntyche. Euler's nose twitches. He looks like he's about to pull at that thread again. No doubt having had and then given up on the idea of weaponizing Errol's powers, now considering revisiting the notion, but he just shakes his head. Shut up, Mr. Ritter. We're done here.